Let me squidge in. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Almost. Right, I think we're recording, so let's get into it. Hello everybody and welcome to my brand new podcast, Thoughts from a Daydreamer. How are you all doing? I hope you're all doing well. I honestly cannot believe this is happening. I am so excited and just so happy that this is happening, if I'm honest. I have been thinking about doing this, I would say, since before the start of this year, end of 2022, I would say, and have just kept putting it off, just have not got around to filming it. And I just never want to be that person. I always want to give something a go when I'm thinking about it, when I'm really excited about it. So here I am, and yeah, I honestly cannot wait to start getting into it as these videos and as these videos and podcasts build up. I think it's going to be really exciting. So let's just get into it. So my name is Liberty and I am a serial daydreamer. I really love learning as much as I can about certain situations and events, and really enjoy picking stuff apart and learning about why things are done certain ways. This relates to a lot of different things in my life that I've come across and learnt about, but the main thing which I would say I am most interested in is Walt Disney World and the Disney company in general. I think they are such a special place, and they honestly just have the most amazing attention to detail and creativity, and literally pretty much anything which is shown in any of their parks, and even going out to films, merchandise, other things that the Walt Disney Company have their hands in. It's all done for a reason, and there's such fun stories and inspiration and reasons behind why things look how they look today. And it just shows you why Disney is one of the most recognisable companies in the world, because they honestly do put so much thought and consideration into everything they create. Obviously, they don't always get it right. What company does always get it right? But honestly, when they do get it right, it's exceptional, and it's next to nothing. Nothing else can be compared to the magic that comes from Disney. And once you really start learning about why things are done like they are, you kind of see Disney in a whole new light, and it just becomes an unmatched franchise to learn about and place to travel to and visit, and it is just really special. So I have been lucky enough to travel to Walt Disney World in Florida pretty much annually since I was about 18 months old, which is crazy. I am so lucky, and I have spent so many important and memorable family trips there. Actually have been really lucky to see it from when I was obviously tiny, what it was like in the 90s, well, not the 90s, I was born in 99, so that would have been really impressive, but what it was like in the 2000s, and then still what it's looking like today, what attractions have stood the test of time over them 20 years, and then what ones have stayed for a very short amount of time. And literally, even though I've been over 20 times now, I still find magic and excitement in it every single time I go, which I think is just, that captures it all really. If you're able to go somewhere and visit somewhere that much, and you still find it exciting when you land and sad when you go home, I think that's when you found one of the best places you can possibly be, if I'm honest. So obviously I love Walt Disney World. I love it for many different things. Obviously I love it as much as everybody else loves it. I love the films, I love the merchandise, I love all the cute things, but I also love it on a deeper level as well. And as mentioned before, I love learning about the history of it, the secret hidden details and meanings. I honestly cannot get enough of that. It is like I don't even know, I'm so obsessed with it, and I would love to spend this podcast talking about all them hidden secrets and treasures which you can find among the park, but just with Disney in general, which hopefully you can pass on to other people when you next visit, or when you're next talking about it at a dinner party, or you find some like-minded people that have also travelled there and love it, or you're trying to offer advice to someone who's going for the first time. I really want this podcast to be accessible for a lot of different kinds of people. Like I said, whether you're going on your first trip or you're going on your 50th trip, I hope there's something of value in these podcasts which you can take on, and it will just make either your own trip or you can offer to someone else's trip to make it that little bit more magical and exciting, and just keep that learning and thrill and education alive, which Walt Disney always wanted, and I think it's always important to just have as well. The minute you stop learning is the minute you stop growing. So the more that you can keep it going, especially when you're going on holiday, it's a win-win. And I just really want to provide a space where I can offer that. I do follow a few different Disney podcasts, which I absolutely love. I might do a podcast in the future just recommending other podcasts which I love, maybe when we're celebrating like our 10th or 20th episode. And they do scatter a few podcasts specifically of interest about Disney World history, Disney World facts and secrets, but no one solely does it as like their whole podcast. So I'm hoping to be that person, I'm hoping to be that outlet, and I'm honestly just really, really excited. So there's a little bit about me and about my history of Walt Disney World and just kind of where it lies for me and how much I love it. But today we're going to start at the very, very beginning and talk about kind of the start of Walt Disney World, what Walt Disney had to do to acquire all the land in Florida, how Florida came about as the next place where a park would go, and basically just talking all about that, which is such an interesting story. It's kind of overlooked because obviously the resort is so massive now, there's so many things to talk about, but actually the very start of it, kind of where they planted the tree to where what it's become, is such an interesting story and so fun, and you can still see remnants of it in the parks today, which I absolutely love. I find it so fun and interesting. So yeah, let's just start talking about it. So I have had to write all my notes down on my iPad just so I can get specific information because I can be quite forgetful sometimes. So like I said, I want this podcast to be accessible for a lot of different people. So I'm just going to do a little bit of background about Walt Disney World in general. Obviously, if you visited before, you probably know this, but still, you might learn something else. So do stay tuned. So as everybody probably knows, Walt Disney World in Florida is the world's largest and most visited theme park resort. It is absolutely huge. Like, I think they equate the amount of land that Walt Disney bought in Florida to be the same size as the whole city of San Francisco, which is huge. I'm not gonna lie, it's massive. And I think a lot of people under anticipate how big it is when they go for the first time, especially if you've been to any of the other parks like Disneyland Paris or Disneyland in California. Obviously, they are on a lot smaller scale. They've both got 2 parks, which are still lovely and a really decent size. But when you go to Walt Disney World in Florida, it is a completely different story. And I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It is so overwhelming. Every time that I've been, we've stayed off-site in villas because my family is quite big, so that's just the most cost effective. And we also do like our own space sometimes as well, but you can stay on site. There's hotels there. There's complete like living facilities there. You could easily spend a 2-3 week holiday just in the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida and not leave and not explore anything else in Florida. Don't even really have to go to a supermarket. You can literally get a coach from the airport to the resort, stay there, and then get it back and not see anything else, which I just find mad. So the Walt Disney World Resort currently consists of 4 different theme parks and 2 water parks as well. So they have Magic Kingdom, which is the main park, which everyone knows about. It's the one with the big blue castle. Lots of photos are taken there all the time. It's the main thing you think of when you think of Disney World. Then you have Epcot, which I would say is probably just as famous as Magic Kingdom. It's got the big white, almost like golf ball looking sphere in the middle of the park, and it's a really, really popular place. It is actually my favourite place to go. It's my favourite park, and that was built second. And then the third one, which they have, is Disney's Hollywood Studios, which used to be a little bit more about the creations of the movies and kind of what goes into Hollywood and filming and stuff like that. However, it has now more become about actually stepping in and becoming part of the movies. It's definitely had a big switch over the past 10 years or so, but still a really, really fun, exciting park to go to, and it's by far the one that has had the most progression over the past decade, I would say. And then the last one is Disney's Animal Kingdom, which is the baby park of the four, not in size but just in age. It's the same age as me, I think, or it was born the year before me, and as guessed by the name, it is all about the animals and looking into nature and sustainability and just how we can be better for the planet. And then there are 2 water parks as well. I think the water parks are quite split. You see some people that go and absolutely love them and cannot get enough of them, and then you get another set of people that, even though they've been to Florida and Walt Disney World so much, they've never really visited them. But honestly, most times when you're getting a 14-day ticket or a 7-day ticket even, most of the time they're included with the ticket, so it's definitely worth a visit, and they are so fun. Like, I think sometimes people think they're not as maybe detailed or as exciting as the parks are, but honestly, they are at the same level and they are amazing. Such a good place to go when you want a little bit more of a relaxed day, but you still want that kind of magic and thrill and fun. It's just the perfect balance and level. I really like the water parks. So the 2 water parks that are there currently is Typhoon Lagoon. I believe this was the first one built out of the 2, and this is kind of a paradise on earth which has been hit by a hurricane or a typhoon, and everything's kind of destroyed. So it's a really fun concept and it's a really great park to visit. And then the other water park is called Blizzard Beach. So this, as guessed probably by the name, is a water park which has been taken over by a snowstorm. So again, a really fun concept. And both the water parks really play into that this is a fun concept and really take it to the next level. I really like visiting them, and definitely if you haven't been to them, I would recommend going because they are so fun. I don't want to get too much into it because I will do a whole separate video on them, but the parking's free there. You can take your own food in, you can kind of stay for as long as you want, do as much as you want. You can either lie on the beach all day or you can go on the attractions and the water slides and stuff like that. And there's just something for everyone there, and I would definitely recommend going, especially if they're included with your ticket as well. It's just a no-brainer. So they are the 4 parks and then the 2 water parks as well. And then Disney also has a shopping centre, it has a housing estate for all of its employees that stay on campus from all over the world. It's got its own golf courses, its own hotels, and lots of other recreational facilities too. So honestly, it is a massive place to visit, and yeah, I don't think you will ever really understand how big it is. Like I said, I have been a really good amount of times and I still can't get over how much land there is that the company own. It's honestly insane, and I don't think anything gets you ready for it until you're actually there visiting it. And like I said, even when you're there, you still can't quite fathom how large it is. But this is actually what Walt Disney wanted. He wanted a resort that was designed to be a self-contained community. He wanted it to have its own infrastructure and services, which included transportation, utilities, and waste management, which Walt Disney World in Florida definitely does, as I've mentioned before. But I just find it interesting that this was always Walt Disney's vision and what he wanted. I think he really found that as a problem when he had Disneyland in California. From what I've read and researched, he really started to envy the fact that people would visit Disneyland, but then they would have to go home at the end of the day, normally limiting their trip there, limiting their stay, and also limiting the magic that he had as well. Obviously, Walt Disney could control everything inside the park and the feelings and the vibes that were in there, and made sure that everybody had the best experience that they possibly could. But after leaving them gates at the end of the day, they would have to either drive home or go to their hotel, and you just couldn't control what sort of experience they would have out of that. So over time, Walt found that to be a massive challenge and barrier, and he realised how amazing it would be if he could have his own hotels, his own services, his own shops, where that magic could continue on. And again, you could go for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and not have to leave the Disney magic if you didn't want to. Something else which I found interesting was that apparently Walt Disney originally wanted to build Disneyland, which is now in California. He actually wanted to build that in Florida to begin with. However, at that time, he found problems with acquiring the necessary land, so he kind of stuck a pin in it and built it in California. But like I said, as time went on, he actually did realise that even though he loved the California park, there was its own limitations there as well. So once Walt Disney realised he had this problem with Disneyland in California, he had kind of done everything that he could do with it. He started looking for other land across the USA which he could develop onto, create a new set of Disneyland parks, and also just expand what he could offer, as he was really interested in having this more immersive experience. So he looked in several locations on the east coast of the USA, which included places like New Jersey and Virginia, which is crazy to think that Walt Disney World could be in them sorts of areas. It just seems like, I don't know, it was always meant to be in Florida, but obviously there were loads of other places where it could have been. But in the end, Disney ultimately settled for Florida due to its warm climate, relatively low land prices, as well as how accessible the location was via car as well. There is a famous video of Walt Disney talking about the Florida project, and I think it aired on like national television at the time, but you can see it on YouTube if you want to. Basically where he's just talking about his plans for Walt Disney World, and he mentions the fact that Florida is the perfect place to travel by automobile, which I absolutely love when he mentions that. It really sets the tone for the era that the Walt Disney World company was building Walt Disney World. And is honestly, it makes me smile every single time because it just shows how forward thinking Walt Disney was with the expansion of technology. Obviously it has come on so much since, but he really loved technology and valued it and wanted to use it as much as he could. He wasn't scared by it at all. And yeah, I just always love that little sentence about the automobiles because I just find it so fun. Obviously no one refers to them as automobiles now, but at the time that was like the technical, like futuristic word they were using for it. So I just find it so fun, and I love it every time I watch that clip. So Walt Disney began purchasing land in Florida for the development of Walt Disney World in the early 1960s, and by the end of about several years or so, he actually accumulated around 27,000 acres of land, which the Walt Disney Company now own, and that has since become Walt Disney World. There have been bigger purchases of land in Florida since, but at the time this was the biggest purchase of land that anyone had ever made by a massive margin, which made it such a great opportunity for Florida as well, and their tourism too. And the land that was purchased in the end was purchased for an average price of $200 per acre. This was much lower than the going rate for many other lands and properties in the area, and this is mainly because of the quality of the land. So before Walt Disney bought it, this land was actually agricultural land, so it was mainly used for cattle and wasn't very developed at all. Obviously, we are also in Florida, and if you have visited before, you know it has absolutely torrential rain sometimes. It never really lasts very long, but it does have massive downpours pretty regularly. And this land was also very well known to flood and created wastelands and swamps across the whole area that Disney bought. And when he was buying it, many people considered that it would be unsuitable to build on just because the land was so damaged and wet and not very nice to walk across. And obviously it also had high water levels and poor drainage, which made the swamps. But Disney, however, didn't listen to what anyone was saying or recommending to him. He saw potential in it and loved the land, loved the location. So he invested in the land. He probably also really loved the price tag on it as well, because not a lot of people wanted it, and decided that this would be the new home for Walt Disney World to be built. My main fact, which I absolutely love, probably the most about this whole story, is that Walt Disney really wanted to keep suspicions low when he was trying to purchase this quantity of land, and didn't want to kind of get people excited and their hopes up and looking for information before he was kind of ready to announce what was going on. So he created a lot of different shell companies, which are actually fake company names, to put all the rights and details under when he was purchasing this land to keep suspicion low, as mentioned before. These included names like Bay Lake Properties and Reedy Creek Ranch. This helped to conceal Walt Disney's involvement and also stop the landowners from knowing who they were selling to as well, which does seem kind of dodgy when you look about it nowadays, but it stopped the landowners putting higher price tags on it because they were selling it to Disney, and as mentioned before, it stopped Disney being in the press as well, which is always nice. I don't know if you could get away with that nowadays. I'm sure it probably does still happen, but I just think it's crazy and such a little fun fact as well. These shell companies are still mentioned about to this day, and you can actually see them all honoured down Main Street, USA in Magic Kingdom. Another fun fact, which honestly I have never taken much consideration over when visiting, but I definitely will be looking at the next time I go, is down Main Street, a lot of the windows on the second and third level of the buildings all have like sign writing on them and stickers on the window basically mentioning different companies. And they relate to a lot of different things, a lot of different important people in the Walt Disney World Company, which help make things happen, which were really important people within the progression of Disney World. And also all the shell company names that were used to buy the land are mentioned in these windows as well. I won't tell you exactly where because I think it's fun to look out for them when you're walking down Main Street without knowing exactly where they are. But again, it is just another little detail, always relating back to the heritage of Walt Disney World and giving thanks to kind of where they started to where they are. And it's kind of set there in time, which I really love. You can always go and see it. I hope it's always going to be there. And yeah, it's just special, and it just makes your trip there even more exciting when you know little facts like that. So definitely next time you're walking down Main Street, take a look at the windows, because this is just one of them, but there is so many windows down there and they all have a meaning to why the signs are written how they are, written about who they are. It all equates to someone or something very, very important in the park. So I honestly love that. So going back to the land, the first land purchase was made in November 1964, and then over the next several years they were buying up land till the Disneyland park opened in 1971. So literally about 6-7 years of buying this land, building it up and getting a good bunch of land that they could then develop on. It was not always a smooth process for Disney. I think it's easy to look back and think that this was a really easy process. They just bought loads of land, they had loads of money, but actually it wasn't. And there was a lot of questions from local residents about what this land was going to be used for, and people that didn't want Disney to come to Florida. Before the interest from Walt Disney, it was a very small place. Not a lot of people visited there at all. So this was going to be a major shock to the system and the community that Florida had already. But as we know, Disney did get all the land, and that even though there was a lot of people that questioned it, there was also a lot of people that were really excited for it too and could see what it was now going to offer to the residents of Walt Disney World in the forms of jobs, in the forms of community building, and just awareness of this new area of the world that hadn't got that much coverage before. But as we said before, obviously the land that Disney bought did not have a good drainage system at all. It was not the best land to build on. So before Disney could do anything and even think about creating Walt Disney World on it, he had to first create a way for all the water to leave the land safely and efficiently, especially with the amount of downpours that Florida does have daily, which I believe did take a lot of time to kind of grasp and understand how they were going to make this work. This is why Walt Disney World has so many lakes and artificial waterways, so that there is a place for most of the water to go. And obviously there are pools along all the resorts as well, which does help with that too, to a certain degree. And literally now when you visit Walt Disney World, you wouldn't even know that it was swampland to begin with. It is so lush and beautiful, but it's just interesting to think the amount of detail and consideration that had to go into creating a resort like that where the water could drain away efficiently, especially from what it looked like in the beginning. So as I mentioned before, the Walt Disney World opening day was in 1971 on October 1st, and Walt Disney himself did actually unfortunately die in 1966 of cancer, so he never actually got to see the opening day of Walt Disney World and died very early on when they were actually able to start building on the land, which is so sad, because as said at the start of this podcast, he was really interested in building this bigger community, really wanted to have an immersive experience for his guests, and just the fact that he never got to see that out fully, it's just really upsetting when it was obviously such a big goal of his, and he did take so long buying and acquiring all the land, and then he had the problems of the drainage. Obviously it's all very valuable time, which took up a lot of the last years of his life, which is honestly crazy and so sad to think. But luckily his brother Roy oversaw the project of Walt Disney World being built, specifically the opening of the Magic Kingdom and then the 2 hotels that opened the same day as that, Disney's Contemporary Resort and Disney's Polynesian Resort as well. And he ensured that these projects followed Walt Disney's brief and really what he envisioned for the park, and just respected his wishes of what he wanted Magic Kingdom and the hotels to be, which I think is so lovely that his brother kind of took the reins but still did it in his honour and made sure it was created just how it was intended to be, which is so special. Again, I don't want to say it's too much because I want to do a whole separate podcast about it, but down Main Street, Roy O. Disney does have his own window, and of course so does Walt Disney as well, so you can look out for them too. So when the day October 1st, 1971 finally came around, Magic Kingdom officially opened, and so did the 2 hotels, and Roy O. Disney actually gave a very special speech on opening day 2, which is so heartwarming. Again, it's on YouTube if you want to go and watch it. Such an amazing speech and really heartfelt. And just honestly, what an achievement and accomplishment was this for the Walt Disney World Company. It was literally such a progression point in the business's life, and it is still massively enjoyed to this day, which is crazy. So even though a few people were skeptical at first, overall Walt Disney World was a major economic development project for Florida. It created thousands of jobs for people and also helped grow for different industries in Florida, such as tourism, hospitality, and retail. It was a massive boom for the state, and a lot of people that were negative about it in the beginning kind of did warm to it as time went on, and obviously it was bringing in more money for the state as well, so created a better quality of life for a lot of different people. And to this day, Disney has continued to do that. It invests and expands its offerings all the time. As I mentioned at the start of this podcast, there is always something new there every single time I visit. I think even if you visited every 3-4 months, you would still see something new or something being built or something changing, which again was a big value of Walt Disney as well. He never wanted to sit still. He never wanted something to stay as it was. He always wanted to change with the times and learn more things, introduce new things, which they're definitely keeping up with Florida still to this day, even though it's been over 50 years since he's passed away, which I honestly love. It is so special and just so nice to see that they're sticking to their roots and again Walt Disney's beliefs and values. So we can see this a lot through all of the parks with the addition of new rides, attractions, hotels, and that the resorts have been updated with new technologies, mobile apps, virtual queues. Even the level of their animatronics now is completely different to what they were at the very beginning, which is obviously just keeping Walt Disney World always current and modern and just more exciting to visit, sticking with the times, and yeah, just making it somewhere that people continuously want to go and visit. I think that's the main reason Disney was so interested in always doing something new, always changing stuff, always upgrading stuff when he could. Once, I believe in Disneyland, California, he heard a conversation between a dad and a daughter, I think. The daughter asked if they could go on the Jungle Cruise ride, and the dad said, no, we're not going on that. We've already been on that. Why would we go on that again? Like when we last came here, we went on that. So it would be the same, which again, he absolutely hated that people were thinking like that, had that mentality that if they had ridden it once, why would they ride it again? If you had visited Disney World once, why would you go again? Which obviously is not good for a business if you want it to continue to make money. Also not very good for the magic as well. Obviously you want people to be excited about going to Disney World, excited to go on holiday and spend their time there. And if they're just feeling like they've seen it all before, that's going to become boring very, very quickly. So that is why the Walt Disney Company continues to develop and work on absolutely everything across all the different parks across the world, because they never want to settle and keep still and allow people to almost get bored of their offerings. They want to keep people excited. They want to keep people on the edge of their seats trying to see what's going to happen next from Disney, which again is honestly such an important business mindset to have, and not just for business but also for just like human emotion and excitement. You've always got to keep in mind how you're going to make people feel, which Disney definitely does, which is honestly why I love it so much. Now I feel like I've literally been talking forever, so before I go I just want to leave with one more little fact. So obviously throughout this podcast we have been talking about the quantity of Walt Disney World, how much land it covers, but one other interesting little secret is only around half of the land has been used and is being used currently in Florida. And as I mentioned, It is huge. Like, it is no joke. It is a massive, massive resort. I think it's got about 30 hotels on, might even be more than that. Obviously the 6 parks. It's got 3 or 4 golf courses. It's got a whole shopping centre. It's got a whole different estate for all the people that are working there from abroad to stay on, as well as a fire station, as well as its own like green areas. It's got the boardwalk. It's just crazy. It's huge. So the fact that it has only used half of the land just means there is still so much space for it to develop and grow. And I can only imagine like how big the amount of land they actually have is, and what their plans are for the future as well. I also find it interesting in the sense that a lot of the development they're doing at the minute, they're knocking down old attractions or old places and rebuilding them or building new stuff on them. But if they've only used half their space, why are they getting rid of old rides? Why are they not just expanding? But there's probably a whole different set of reasons and answers to why that is. But I would just personally feel like instead of getting rid of old attractions and places, why not just expand and introduce new ones on top of the old ones? But like I said, it's not my company, and I still really love everything that Walt Disney World has done. But I just find it fascinating that there's still about around half of that land they still have to develop on, if they ever wanted to in the future, or they might just keep it as green to kind of seclude Walt Disney World in its own little resort. But it's honestly insane, and when you start thinking about the quantity of land they have already and the fact they could potentially double that in the future, I'm gonna honestly have to start booking longer holidays there. I'm gonna start having to go for a month plus if they keep building it out. Honestly, there is so much to see at the moment, and if they introduce even more, it's going to be a serious operation visiting there. But yeah, that is basically this week's podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. I cannot believe we are 1 down already. And I hope you learned something new about the Walt Disney Company and all the hoops they had to jump through to acquire the land that Walt Disney World is sat on today. And I also hope when you next walk down Main Street, you have a look at them windows, because that is by far my most favourite fact out of today's podcast, I think. So much so that actually in next week's podcast, I'm going to be talking about the windows down Main Street, both in Walt Disney World, Florida and Disneyland, California, and diving into a few of the names mentioned on there and what they mean, which I'm honestly so excited about. Like I said, definitely my favourite fact in today's podcast, and something I think we're going to learn a lot about in the next one. There's some really important people mentioned there, which we can definitely learn a lot from and kind of value next time that we visit Walt Disney World as well. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed today's podcast and leave with something of value. I really loved filming it. This was really fun. Definitely different to any sort of content I've filmed in the past, but I've really loved it. It's been really chilled and relaxed. I do also have an email which I'm going to leave in the description, as well as the show notes, which I've been following in today's podcast. So if you want to learn about anything specifically surrounding Walt Disney World history, facts and secrets in the future, please drop me an email and I would love to reply to you. And kind of start building some more episodes of what people actually want to see. I would also love in future to have guests on, so if you have a particular interest in Disney history or know some secrets that maybe a lot of people don't know, please drop me an email as well, or a message. I will leave all the handles below, like I said, because I would love to have some more people on. I think it's really, really exciting. I do love sitting here and just chatting by myself, but it would also be quite fun if I had someone to chat with too. But apart from that, that's all I've got to say for this week's episode. I've got to stop chatting. I would literally just keep going if it was up to me, but I will stop here. Please look out for next week's video again, where I'm going to be talking about Magic Kingdom windows and their meanings. And yeah, apart from that, I will see you next week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Educated, but I'm so frustrated.